US Sport.
On Off the Ball.
With 888 Casino. 18 plus, see gamblingcare.ie.
All right, you're very welcome. Full house today. Cian, how are you?
I'm good, Ger. How are you? More importantly, we haven't seen you in a while.
Everybody's here at the same time. It's remarkable.
You timed it well, because we're getting to what is the best weekend of football in the NFL season as far as I'm concerned, and especially after the Wildcard Weekend that just went by. It was a little bit flat. This next weekend is generally like the great one. But of course, look, I won't jump ahead to that because we've got some news to talk about that concerns Mick very much.
Oh, absolutely. Mike Vrabel, come on down, baby. It's mad they didn't give him the job in the first place.
Yeah, there was a weird succession plan. I think there was a little bit of Robert Kraft ego involved in the promotion from within. Jared Mayo, handpicked, etc. I don't think anybody will be surprised to learn of Bob Kraft ego. Certainly a lot of the narrative around the Dynasty TV show and book and everything like that is that somebody trying to make sure that his name is to the fore in the credit for the great era above the quarterback and coach, and even striking dissension between the two to make sure he's part of it. So it's a weird time to be a Patriots fan because everybody is really turned against the owner, But at the same time, Mike Vrabel is seemingly, anyway, the right call. That was a Titans team that never had a proper quarterback. He was coach for 6 years. They made the AFC Championship game. They won 11 games twice. Finished off pretty badly, but then again, he's doing it with like Ryan Tannehill and various other, mediocre to fair quarterbacks in that time. So I think there's general enthusiasm. There's general sense that this man will rediscover and instigate the
Patriot
culture,
way.
the Patriot way, etc., without necessarily always harping back to the old days and so on.
Really?
He's done a good job so far. Anyway, his introductory press conference was a good article in The Athletic about how he was. He somehow managed to not annoy any media by refusing to talk about the past or, in fact, the future. And just talk about all the work that needs to be done. No predictions, no timelines, nothing to do with the fact that he's done anything in the past, rejecting all conversation about Belichick, about the 3 Super Bowls he won, even about the Super Bowl touchdown catch that he made in 2004.
He won 3, did he? Or just won 1?
He won the first 3, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he was
That's
one of the main linebackers in that team, and I think people probably most famous as a player for, despite being a really elite linebacker, for regularly coming in and playing offense and catching a Tom Brady 2-yard pass for a touchdown.
They've got the number 4 overall pick.
Yeah, they do. We talked about that last week. Should have been 1.
Don't mention the war. Please don't mention the war. No, I think that this is an interesting one because, like Mick, you mentioned Ryan Tannehill and the quarterbacks there, but the big thing there is also he had Derrick Henry, which is what he built that previous Titans team around. From a footballing perspective, I think you can break this down and really criticise Vrabel if you want to. Now, I'm not going to necessarily say I will do that, because this is very much about a leadership position, and it's about a guy who's going to be at the point of the franchise and make the right hires and put them in the right direction. In terms of what's his identity as a coach, doesn't really have one, I don't think, because everyone will say he's a linebackers coach, come defensive coordinator, come head coach, and former linebacker as well, obviously. But if you look at his track record coaching defense, it hasn't been good. He hasn't built or developed defensive players very well. So in Tennessee, you point to his record overall, and you're like, yep, absolutely, they won games. They won games in the AFC South. They won games outside the AFC South as well, but primarily they were working in the AFC South that isn't very good. So, I'm not quick to judge here. I'm not quick to criticise it, but I'm also not necessarily celebrating it. It's a hire that doesn't really excite me all that much. And the one thing I will say is I hope Pep Hamilton is getting paid for these interviews, because the poor guy is just always used to fulfill the Rooney Rule when someone wants someone else. Every single time it seems to be. I wonder, does he just go in and kind of sit there and know that they're just like, oh yeah, we're hiring him. We have a chat for 20 minutes. We'll pay you 10 grand and then see you later or something. Because if he's going into these expecting to actually get hired at this stage, I feel very bad for him.
Yeah. People will know that the Rooney Rule requires coaches to fill head coach vacancies by interviewing at least 2 minority candidates. The Patriots got both of those out of the way really early. They interviewed Byron Leftwich as well, and it felt very tokenistic. Nobody thought that it was going, and it's not the rule. Now, there's absolutely, they had a sense of urgency of wanting to be the first team to get a coach. like they did last year, when obviously because they were hiring Jared Mayo, they didn't have to go through a Rooney Rule issue. But yeah, first rather than best seemed like their process, and because of that, they made an absolute farce of what the spirit of the law rather than the rule of the law.
Do you think it's a good idea?
First rather than best, except when it comes to the draft, Mick.
Picking fourth is fine, right? I've only done cursory research on the draft as it pertains to Dynasty, and there's a load of players who are of fairly similar standards.
It's more what you can get for it if you're
already if you're a quarterback.
If you're a number one pick, and the best time to do it is when you're not looking for a quarterback.
Yeah. Because
King's ransom, lots of desperate teams. These players that we don't think much of right now, these two quarterbacks, by the time we get to late February, early March, and everyone starts going mad on the draft and there's no football to watch their stock rise.
Well, Tennessee will be looking for a quarterback. They're number one. Cleveland will be looking for a quarterback. Deshaun Watson tore his Achilles again. What a pity.
Conveniently.
And the Giants, I suppose, will be looking for a quarterback. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they have to. Yeah,
unless they all get something in free agency or some backup in free agency. So look,
there might not be three quarterbacks. It might behoove one or two of those franchises to trade down.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like
get someone later on in the draft.
The other big coaching news is that Dallas handled the situation really well. Let's just start with that. They've done brilliantly here. They were offered the opportunity to get picks or something, and they're like, no, you can't talk to our coach. And I was like, well, we don't want them either. It's like, what? What are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
I'm very surprised that Jerry Jones mishandled something, aren't you?
Mike McCarthy.
But I think the go on.
Where's he going?
Well, Mike McDonald, there's two sides of this, because there's two very really interesting aspects of it. Let's talk about Mike McCarthy first, and we'll keep the real spicy stuff for afterwards. Mike McCarthy is being slated as either Chicago Bears or New Orleans Saints head coach, I believe, right now. And the Chicago Bears, unfortunately for all our Bears fans, I know we have a chunk of them who follow and listen to this podcast every single week. Unfortunately for them, it sounds like he's going to be the Bears coach, unless someone like Aaron Glenn or Ben Johnson is actually there as in the background and waiting for their job after the Lions is out, or Lions are out of the playoffs. It's just a really hard one to sell at this stage. Apparently, Mike McCarthy and Jerry Jones came together and talked about how they could work together moving forward, and never even got to the point of talking about a contract. So whatever happened there, suddenly they went from we're keeping you to not having you. There was probably a diverging ideas of how to bring the franchise forward. Generally, that means what kind of big moves you're going to make, and that probably revolved around Dak. So the problem for the Bears now, or for Bears fans, if you don't want Mike McCarthy, is he'll come in and be talk about how he worked with Aaron Rodgers and how he developed Aaron Rodgers and how he won a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers, all this stuff that happened more than 10 years ago. And he'll sell himself to the nines for executives and the owner there who absolutely love hearing the big name and love seeing the Super Bowl ring and love knowing about the trophy, because it's desperately what they want. And they'll say, oh, we've got a really young talented quarterback like Caleb Williams here. He's similar to Aaron Rodgers. Mike McCarthy's done this before. He knows how to get the most out of him, and he knows how to set him up for success. And the problem is we just haven't seen that for so long. So to me, it's a very, very depressing thought for Bears fans who have gone through enough depression over the years when it comes to their head coach and their quarterback situation. Would he be better than Matt Eberflus? Probably, but you've also lost your continuity with your young rookie quarterback. So all of this just feels really bad, and it always feels like this thing that we always say about bad franchises find ways to stay bad, and unfortunately that seems to be the direction the Bears are going in. And even with the Cowboys moving on from Mike McCarthy, you still don't really feel great about them because of the way they did it, like you just mentioned.
I don't know if it's easy to be the Dallas Cowboys coach. I think it's fair to judge McCarthy negatively given how his last 4 or 5 years went to Green Bay as well, but he's someone that's had two of the most high profile jobs in the NFL for a long, long period of time now. He's had some relative success. He's always kept his teams relevant, I suppose, if you're looking for positives from Chicago's point of view, and he has got offensive weapons to work with there that, there could be an interesting. I think the reality though is that the NFL has probably passed them by at this stage. There is just a little nugget that's telling me you can't judge anybody on what they do in Dallas with Jerry Jones hanging around, picking the team, the most interfering owner in the NFL. There is just a massive handicap on you as a coach. So if he does go to the Bears and somehow rediscovers the exciting coach he was 15 years ago, fine, it could happen. You know what I mean? That is hanging over me, that there's the Dallas handicap there.
Jerry Jones is 82. It's going to be difficult, I suspect, for him to convince one of the bright new coaching tyros from the NFL to come. And that's why the Deion Sanders story seems to make sense. It's somebody who understands him. It's somebody who knows him.
Yeah.
Is this going to happen, Cian, or what do you think?
The signs suggest so. And like this, you say it makes sense there. And it makes sense in terms of it's exactly what you kind of expect the Cowboys to do. It's a bit mental. Like Deion Sanders has been in college football for 3 or 4 years now. He abandoned his first team after 2 years after convincing loads of guys to transfer there to go to Colorado. He's brought them from, I think, a 3-win team in his first year to an 8-win team in his second year, but they still went something like 8-4 last year, lost their bowl game. It's not like he has become this superpowered head coach. Like, obviously the coverage is all there in college football because he's a huge name, and recruiting is so important in college football that he was able to pull all these stars over to Colorado, a place where they normally wouldn't go. But he hasn't got the most out of them as football players. He hasn't developed himself as a coach and put himself in this position where loads of teams in the NFL are like, oh, we need Deion Sanders. This is 100% Jerry Jones. Oh, wow, Deion. We can get Deion in. And the reason I think this is probably already decided on is because of Deion's quotes that came out last night, where he wasn't... Like, normally with this kind of thing, you don't say anything until it's going in one direction. And Deion came out and walked the line of, oh, Colorado is great football. We're great football, but it's a massive privilege to be interviewed by the Dallas Cowboys. And I'm looking forward to talking more about the opportunity. And you're kind of like, man, you don't say that if you're staying where you are and coaching. This sounds like something that's already done, that's going to be put forward and sorted out. Deion, character-wise, obviously, look, before he was a coach, everyone had opinions on Deion's character. He was a crazy player, crazy athlete, and then off the field, he was Neon Deion or whatever you want to call him. But he's had a bunch of issues in college as well, like dealing with the media. He's snapped at media. He's treated college players like their children in a way that historically has not worked for coaches going from college football to the NFL. Urban Meyer's the most recent example of that, where it just fell apart in Jacksonville very quickly. So it'll bring a lot of fun for us watching on. It'll bring a lot of probably drama during the season and probably in the off season, because you wonder what they're going to do with Dak as well. This after last year getting injured again, there's probably question marks about whether they keep him. So we'll enjoy it. Will Cowboys fans enjoy it? Will Cowboys players enjoy it? I don't know.
Love it.
I'd say they will if it goes okay at the start. And the big question is obviously what happens with Dak and whether or not they bring him back. They've made him the highest paid QB. They've spent a lot of money on him. He was terrible before he got injured. And then he got injured and everybody kind of forgets that he was terrible before he was injured.
He also was very, very good last season. Got a lot of MVP votes and so on. Like, I think they're tied in with Dak. I don't know if there's options out there. You know, it's not as if you can move on from someone like Dak and get a better quarterback easily. You know, you have to, unless they want to suck. And I don't think you're going to bring in Deion Sanders to go, 1-16.
No, I don't think so.
Unless it could easily happen by accident, of course.
One of those hot names that we were talking about in the coaching carousel at the moment is Ben Johnson. Tom Brady's role in the Raiders is more public and pronounced than I had expected.
It's more Jim Ratcliffe to the Glazers than I expected Tom Brady to Mark Davis to be. Yeah,
3% ownership.
Yeah, but he's running the bloody place.
What's going on here, Cian?
Well, apparently Ben Johnson, Lions offensive coordinator, who is the hot candidate this year, like no one's higher up than him. Like he's because of what he's done with Jared Goff, what he's done with all those weapons there. I talked about Mike Vrabel not developing players. All he's done in Detroit is develop players. He apparently came into the offseason and did like what any sane person would do and looked at the state of the Las Vegas Raiders. Don't have a quarterback, don't have a way of getting a quarterback as far as we can tell. They have Brock Bowers, he's great. They have Tyree Wilson, who on the defensive side has probably been a bit underwhelming but could develop into something high quality moving forward. But that's kind of all they have. And then you've got Mark Davis there, and the general structure of the franchise hasn't been a positive one for head coaches in the past. And he essentially saw all that and went, right, they're not for me. I'm not even going to interview with them. And then Tom Brady swooped in and was like, hey, Ben, you should come and work with me and talk to me because I'm Tom Brady. Look at my hair. I'm great. How many all these Super Bowl rings? And that kind of wooed him, I guess, a little bit. And now apparently he's going to interview with him. Now, Do I think he's going to wind up the Raiders coach? I'm not sure. I would probably bet against it at this point, just because the gap between that job and every other job is massive, and Ben Johnson seems like a smart human being. But it does tell you the sway that Brady has, and this is something to watch out for moving forward when there's stuff like rules committees and stuff like that. I think he's going to be heavily involved in that kind of thing. Like in the past, people would have said he was changing rules as a player, but now he's actually officially going to be able to change some rules, or at least have an impact on them when they have the meetings.
If you want to let some air out of the ball, it's okay, right? It's a new rule. If you want to let the air out, it's fine. It doesn't matter. The pressure's irrelevant. That kind of stuff.
What was the outcome of that?
Yeah, a little bit of that.
The outcome of that was
he got a 4-game ban.
A bunch of people got
having not actually done anything, but like
the Turnpike.
Yeah, so I don't think he changed any rules there. I think they invented a rule to ban him.
Did they?
But anyway, yeah, all the evidence would suggest
What Mick said there is the key, though. Brady's heavily involved here, and it's a weird thing because he's also a commentator right now as well. So you do get those two. I wonder maybe that's part of it. Maybe to keep the commentary job, he has to have a certain limited ownership there officially, and then he can actually run the football stuff. I don't know. Either way, it's fascinating.
He's not allowed into the meetings. You know, the meetings that they use as crutches. Yeah, in the commentary, he's not allowed to go to those team meetings. And he's not allowed like be overly critical of referees or opposition teams. But I actually think he's improved as a commentator as the year goes on. I don't mind his games now, I have to say. I think he's a lot more. There's a lot more flow there. He's not like stopping at random points and sentences anymore.
You say they haven't been a great place for head coaches, unless you're the actual head coach. Like they give an absolutely
They're still paying Tree, I think, aren't they?
Well, they give a massive contract to John Gruden.
Yeah, still paying him.
They did keep this guy who was the interim on the basis of the players saying they wanted him to be kept. So, like, it's not like you're not going into Jerry Jones and having to argue everything every day and him having an opinion. You're going in there and you're the alpha dog straight away saying, well, you've hired me because of my football mouse, and how are you doing before I got here? Not that great. So, especially
if they get the guy they want, I think they would actually hand it over to him, and that's fine. And Cian mentioned they've got Brock Bowers. The problem is if you're Johnson, like, he's got a huge reputation. He's got one chance at being a first-time head coach. He didn't go for it last year. He decided to stick to a second year in Detroit, or an extra year, I suppose, in Detroit. He could have got a head coaching job last year. And I think the reason was the right opportunity wasn't there. He probably sees that there's a Super Bowl in this team, and he's willing to wait. He's willing to go and find the right opportunity. He doesn't want to Josh McDaniel it. So I think that there's an element of, like, I think the Raiders would be a crazy place for him to go. Not only have they not got a quarterback or a way of getting a quarterback like this, they haven't drafted a quarterback in the first round since 2007, when they made the Jamarcus Russell mistake, probably the worst first overall pick of all time. He lasted a season and a half and was out of the NFL, basically. They haven't. So it's not. This is a team that has just been badly run for so long, and their roster depth is terrible. You know, they got Bowers. That was a great first round pick this year, but they've got literally Aidan O'Connell and who else is it? Not Mitch Trubisky. What's his name?
Matt Jones.
Gardner Minshew. Like, thrown to him. You know, it's disastrous. And the worst thing, then they went and won, I think, 3 of their last 4 games or something like that, and got themselves halfway up the draft board. You know, they had controlled the number 1 pick before the Patriots did.
The Fox at the moment ranked the available jobs with the Cowboys 1, the Jags 2, the Bears 3, the Jets 4, the Raiders 5, the Saints 6.
Yeah.
The
Saints is an awful one as well. They're stuck with Derek Carr for one more year. I think the Jags is probably a decent one.
And is Chicago not a good job?
And Chicago's the best.
I'd take Chicago, yeah.
Is Dallas not a good job if you're a hotshot coach and you've got Dak and you've got offense talent, now you need some running backs, you get them easy enough. Away you go, no?
Yeah, I was going to say something there that I definitely shouldn't say. But if, let's say, if Jerry wasn't involved, then the Cowboys would be a great team, like, because you can get who you want. You do have a decent roster there. You do technically have a quarterback there. But it's just, you know yourself, it's so tumultuous. There was talk that Belichick wanted the Cowboys job, and that's why he has the out in his North Carolina gig. But that doesn't seem to be coming to fruition at all. It's when you look at those jobs, like Mick mentioned the Saints there with Derek Carr, they're also 70 million over the cap. Like, they have to get worse. They can't get better. The Raiders don't have a running back of note. They don't have a wide receiver of note. They traded those guys away, or they let them leave in free agency, like Josh Jacobs. So it's literally Brock Bowers and everyone else. The Jaguars is the other one you mentioned. So the Jaguars is the one you can argue for. You can argue for the Jaguars because Brian Thomas Jr. is fantastic. Obviously, defensively, they got Josh Allen, who's changed his name now. Sorry, I can't remember the name he's changed to, but the defensive end formerly known as Josh Allen, and they've got a bunch of talent on both sides of the ball. But Trevor Lawrence at this point has 100% proved he's not the quarterback there. So unless you come in and believe you can change him, and that's where you look at Ben Johnson and you're like, oh, Ben Johnson did this with Goff, so maybe he can do it. So it depends how you view Lawrence, really, the Jaguars' job as a whole, which I know is a very rudimentary thing to say, but here more than in most other jobs.
He's probably 95% proved it. He's got one more chance, doesn't he? Lawrence.
That he's not, or that he is?
No, he's saying that he's 100% proved that he's not the guy, but I think there's probably... I think he's got one more chance, but I don't think there's many left. You know, I think we could be looking back at Trevor Lawrence's era very quickly if next season doesn't go well, especially with another new head coach. Like
Josh Hines.
The other thing about... Yeah, the other thing about that job is, and Ger, you'll know this person very well, Trent Baalke is the GM there, and he's carrying over from firing Doug Peterson. So Trent Baalke is kind of running things over there more so than you will be as a head coach if you go in.
That'd be a deal breaker.
Sorry, this is a complete aside, and we should definitely move on to the games. But how are the Saints still over the cap? They seem to have been in cap trouble for about 10 years now, and they've got no players. Like they've got their two best players last year were genuinely Cameron Jordan and Alvin Kamara, who. You know, Cameron Jordan's actually about 40 and Alvin Kamara is like 30, which is like 40 for a running back. And they've got nobody else. Like, how could they be still in cap trouble? I don't know what the hell Sean Payton did to that team before he left. But
well, the owners all were involved in a row about who actually owned it, and that while that was happening, the GM was also the GM of the hockey team. Am I right? I think I'm right in saying so. That everybody was a little bit distracted.
Yeah.
For the last couple
The
of years.
hockey or the basketball team, I can't remember which, but it's also, this is a very important thing to learn this time of the year if you do follow the offseason in the NFL. Everyone will talk about how they can create cap space right now. You cannot create cap space. You can move it around. You can move cap space from future years into this year. That's why the Saints are constantly in trouble, because that's what they've been doing for 10 years.
They'll void years at the end of the contract. That's it's a magic trick. Cap space, it's fine. Let's do some quick game recaps before we preview what's going to happen next weekend. We'll start in chronological order. The Chargers-Texans. Disappointment from the Chargers? I don't know, were you guys were you on the Chargers train last week?
I picked the Texans, and I think Cian was very much in the middle. I think we both were. There was a sense that I just picked basically on the Texans being a home team and probably being a little bit under the radar coming into the playoffs because they'd been there since about week 5 and hadn't been too impressive. They've just no receivers, so they weren't like overly impressive either. The only thing that was interesting about this game was, one, there's going to be massive questions about Justin Herbert and his ability to get it done in the playoffs. I think it's probably unfair. I still think that's a team that's building, and we have to wait and see kind of what they become. But he's 0-2 in the playoffs now. CJ Stroud is 2-1 as a matter of interest after his second year, but very entertaining game, like absolute insanity. Stupid things kept happening over and over again, which doesn't actually suggest good playoff football, but good to watch nonetheless.
Cian?
It was a lot of drops on the Chargers side, which is like a bit boring to say because it's something we've repeated over and over again. But Quentin Johnson had at least 3, probably a 4th as well, that didn't really count as a drop, but it was a play he should have made that he didn't make down the sideline when he faded away from the ball instead of running back through it to catch it. Will Dissly had 2 huge drops, one on the first drive that would have converted a 1st and 20, I think, and then the second one that led to the interception. Herbert threw an ugly pick 6 where he overthrew a route in the flat. That he deserves massive criticism for. Beyond that, I find a hard way of criticising him because he was just constantly under pressure. His receivers were constantly dropping the ball. Myself and Mick talked about it last week, but these were 2 very similar teams, and it's actually kind of the way it played out. I know scoreline suggests it wasn't, but it was kind of on a knife edge the whole way through because both sides' defensive fronts just dominated. They were battering the quarterbacks. They were shutting down the running games. The Texans actually abandoned the run completely for a long stretch of the game after initially trying to run the ball and not being able to, which put Stroud in difficult positions. He was kind of up and down throughout the game as well. The Chargers, like they're in a rebuild. They probably shouldn't have been in the playoffs, but the fact that the playoffs are extended now and they were able to win some close games, they had a good year, I would guess. The real big thing for them, and I've got it written down there as well, Lad McConkey is he's been brilliant. He's been so good as a rookie wide receiver. They need 2 more of him. To me, he's Deebo Samuel 2.0, and that touchdown, the 80-yard touchdown he had in the third quarter or fourth quarter, whatever it was, that was just so emblematic of what Deebo's done for his whole career, where he goes between 2 defenders, both of them hit him at the same time. He somehow stays upright while the 2 of them are gone down.
He's turning
he's
as
able
they're
to immediately
colliding,
take off and go. Yeah, it was phenomenal. So there's there's real reasons for the Chargers to be excited. But yeah, this year it was just a step too far for them, really.
The Texans' joy is that they're now facing the Chiefs in the next game. How do they match up against the Chiefs?
Well, Cian will go into more detail, but that defensive line, the two outside rushers, Anderson and give me the other name.
Hunter.
Hunter. Demel Hunter are just going to cause all kinds of trouble. And it's the Chiefs who have been better over the last kind of 5-6 weeks and have protected Mahomes a little bit better and given him that little bit more time. I wonder when it comes to it, are they good enough? You know, I do think the Chiefs will win the game. I don't think any of us are going to go against them, but they're going to cause a lot of trouble there. They were really good on Saturday.
So it's going to be a tight game, Cian?
It'll be cagey for a while, at least, I think. It really comes down to CJ Stroud, because I do think the Texans have enough on defense to contain the Chiefs and force the Chiefs into one of those 2016 games that they've had during the regular season, or 16-13, those one-score games where they just hold on in the end. But if because Stroud didn't play that well last week, and while he wasn't playing that well, the likes of John Mechie were making mistakes, like a fumble at the very start of the game, and it drops it otherwise. But Nico Collins is still someone that the Chiefs are going to struggle to cover. They'll probably look to double team him, and then it comes down to Stroud being able to hit tight windows and throw on the move. Something he did phenomenally well as a rookie, but most notably, that ability to throw on the move has really disappeared this year. He had an interception, or at least a dropped interception against the Chargers, where he was outside the pocket and threw back across his body, and it was a play you don't expect from him and something you don't see him make, and you obviously can't afford to make too many mistakes against Mahomes. Ultimately, I think you've got Andy Reid, you've got Patrick Mahomes, they'll pull you through. But this is going to be a closer game than people think, because just the way they match up, Mick talked about it there, Hunter and Anderson, like, they're going to be on Mahomes all day. So it'll be a lot of how much creativity does Andy Reid use to protect his quarterback.
I thought Stroud showed, it's full of mistakes that we've been kind of seeing all season, but there were some big moments. You know, the way we've been talking about, like, what's defined Jaden Daniels all year, we'll talk about him in a few minutes, was that, like, ability to immediately sort of sense the moment and stand up, and that's the sign of the quarterback leader that you need for 10 years or so. And I thought that Stroud, especially later on in the game, showed a few of those big moments where he just held it. There was one time when he held on to the ball for maybe like 15 seconds or something. It was incredible, but just found his man, kept his cool all the way. So I wonder, will a couple of, like, you know, winning a playoff game for the second year in a row just kind of bring back the CJ Stroud that we sort of saw last year, because we know the talent is there. Nico Collins was unbelievable, but it must be said, it's because he has to be. There's no other options there. They're gone. Obviously, they lost Tank Dell. They lost the Stephon Diggs. Obviously, he was their big acquisition and was supposed to completely transform their offense. So they're really struggling. Joe Mixon had a poor game as well, even though the stats wouldn't really suggest that he had a bad fumble and wasn't really getting the yards. So he could step up for sure. They definitely need him to, because they need to take the pressure off Collins and Stroud.
The ability of the Texans to turn around where they were to where they are now, obviously they hit on a quarterback, that helps a lot, but it does show you what a good coach and some good draft picks can actually do, and how quickly some of those teams picking early in the draft might be relevant.
They had 2 and 3 in the draft that year, but in all fairness, they got CJ Stroud and the Will Anderson from it. So like, you have to pick right as well.
Totally.
I do think because you mentioned the two of them there as well. Now, Stroud didn't have a great second year, but he's still one of those high-end quarterbacks. So it's fair what Mick is saying. Like, he made plays when they needed him to make plays. Because you mentioned Will Anderson there, I think that while we've been focused on Stroud, the second year has really been about Will Anderson. I think he's really emerged into, because when he came out of college at Alabama, he was this freak athlete with all this upside, and I was comparing him to DeMarcus Ware, but I didn't think he was going to play like DeMarcus Ware early in his career. And I think now we're at the precipice of him joining Myles Garrett and TJ Watt and becoming one of these superstar defensive ends. And for the Texans, he's so young. Like, you've got that for the next 5 or 6 years at least.
Yeah. Okay, so
Chiefs all round.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have settled. They've done what you worry about with the Chiefs, which is they haven't played a game in 2 weeks really now, because it was week 18 didn't matter. They had their bye week, but they're well used to that. But they've also just kind of, like, they stopped winning games by, dodgy field goal blocks or, everything like that. They've started coming into their own. They look more like the Chiefs right at the time of year. We all knew they would. You start to convince yourself after about 8 weeks of the big bad. For 6, you're saying it's fine. Then 7 and 8, you're going, maybe this is the year. And then they just get back to what they're doing well. So you'd have them as Super Bowl favourites even. You certainly can't see the Texans going into Arrowhead and winning.
All right. Commanders Buccaneers is next. I think a lot of us had high hopes that Baker Mayfield was going to emerge finally. This is it now. And he's obviously very good. He had a remarkable regular season, but just at the key moment here.
There's some level of irony here. So he was very good during the regular season, but he also led the league in interceptions, I believe, with 15. And the kind of irony of this is he didn't have an interception that cost him the game. It was that stupid fumble that can happen to anyone. I wouldn't even necessarily blame Baker for that. It's a timing issue with the play where, obviously, actually, you can blame the quarterback generally, but it's something that just happens as well. It's not something you'll measure each quarterback on and say whether they do it too often or not. It's just bad timing in a big moment. But I do think, if you do watch that game, you do see where someone who's very good and not good enough, and then you see someone who is, oh yeah, this is why that guy is special. And you just saw, Jaden Daniels, left tackle, may as well have not been on the field. He was under pressure every single time he touched the ball, and yet, despite that, he was able to continue making plays. Even the decisive play of the game, well, not the decisive play, sorry, but the play at the end of the fourth quarter when he was able to run around the edge to run out all the clock so they could kick the field goal and not have to worry about the Bucs coming back. That's a play that was broken because the offensive line let a defender come right through the middle, and the defensive lineman wasn't able to grab onto Daniels because Daniels was so strong with his handoff before accelerating away from him. So you have this quarterback who's really good in the system and it can do a lot to get Mike Evans the ball and help you win a lot of games. And then you have a quarterback who solves problems and who transcends his supporting cast, and that's who Jaden Daniels is. And that's kind of why this, we said last week, is probably the greatest rookie season of all time. And now he's won a playoff game. I'm not sure how you argue against it.
On the road.
Yeah.
Very, very rare for a rookie to win a playoff game on the road.
Is there any sign of him coming back to earth? Any indication that maybe at some point this is going to...
He's an alien. He doesn't never need to come back to Earth. What he does is just so. If we just talk about the final drive, you can talk about the whole game because there was loads of stuff throughout the game. The deep ball he hits to Terry McLaurin on the first third down of the game. The defense is basically saying to him, "Oh, we don't think you're brave enough to try this throw. We don't think you'll be able to make it this early in the game. So we're going to blitz the hell out of you and force you into that specific pass." And then he makes it. He makes it perfectly, and McLaurin complements it with a great catch. But if you go to the final drive of the game alone, he's cutting the defense apart as a pocket passer. He's understanding when his check down is going to be wide open for a first down, and then he's running around and escaping all the pressure and running for first downs when he needs to. This is Lamar Jackson 2.0, but the argument is there is that he's better than Lamar Jackson was as a rookie, and he's also more of a what's the best way to explain this? He's more of a fundamentally sound pocket passer than Lamar is, probably even right now. There's a lot of criticism of Jaden Daniels from people who are just desperate to criticize him, but I've got literally nothing about his game that isn't high end. So this is the challenge for the Lions this week, because you're the defensive coordinator. You're okay, they've got a weak offensive line, they've kind of got one receiver I'm scared of, and then everything else you can kind of handle. How do I approach this game? And then you look at the quarterback and you go, oh wait, no matter what I do, that guy's got the solution for what I do. So really, what the hell, how do I even start here? There's no game plan for this skill set when he plays to it this consistently. This is just, it's so much fun to watch, and it's a spectacular thing to see.
You're kind of talking me into trying to change my pick, except the graphic has been chiseled in.
Graphic's already made, so there's nothing you can do about it.
Come to the dark side with me, Ger.
The Lions have 13 players on defense on injured reserve as of week 18.
Yeah, the first and second choice defensive line. It is an issue, but the offensive line isn't really, when this guy gets some proper protection, God only knows what he can do. But his poise needs to be pointed out. So this was their fifth one-score victory in a row. That comes down to the quarterback. They've won 8 in his rookie season, including the last 5. This 5-game win streak where they've won by 1 score each time has come on the back of a 3-game losing streak. So you come in that, it's right, okay, he's done well. What a great first season. They might sneak into the playoffs. And then they came back and turned it around again. He's shown everything you need. And to have that, rookies will make mistakes, and they'll make mistakes usually at the wrong times, and they'll make them in the most high-pressure situations. When the pressure's at its highest, Jaden Daniels at his best. You watch him in the first 3 quarters of a game. He's doing lots of good things. He's making some bad decisions as well. He's not standing out a mile. You put him in a 2-minute drill, it's like he's Tom Brady. Do you know, like, and that's the, like, you know, who, like, or someone, who do you trust to get you, Patrick Mahomes say, who do you trust to go down and get you that score that's needed in the last thing of the game? And look, again, I don't think they had him come from behind in all 5 of those games or anything like that, but there's been lots of game-winning drives in there over the 8 games of his rookie season. It's phenomenal.
Sorry, I should just point out, this is the first time I've seen this. Aidan Hutchinson said he'll be back for the Super Bowl should they make it.
When did he most recently say that? He had said that not too long after his surgery, but
a week before Christmas.
Yeah, okay.
What was his injury again? I remember it being
Broken
something
tibia.
that's like
Broken tibia.
I guess maybe you could Terrell Owens it and come back in and be effective, but I kind of feel like whenever anyone suffers an injury like that, and because the NFL season is so short, it kind of feels like Harry Kane in that Champions League final, where you'll be there, you'll be in your jersey. Will you be yourself? Probably not.
No, probably not himself. In fairness, I think you would have to, if you're whoever they're playing, you're going to have to pay a little bit of attention just in case freak athlete turns out to be freak athlete. You know,
and you know what the trick is? Strap up the wrong leg. The Shawnee McMahon rule. Get attacked at the wrong leg.
The next game we want to talk about is the Broncos Bills, and we'll preview the Ravens Bills here.
Skip over the Broncos Bills, will we?
Well, you've got some quick things. Drive
boring.
by. You're a Bo Nix man. What do you want talking about?
Nah, not anymore.
I think, to be fair to Bo Nix, he played well to his level. Like, it's not like he did a whole lot wrong in that game. They had drops and they had problems on offense that weren't anything to do with him. But and look, over the course of this year, like, he's still a rookie quarterback. We just talked about what Jaden Downs has done beyond as a rookie quarterback. Like, he, as a rookie, went to expectations or beyond expectations. He made the playoffs. He may have snuck in there. He may have been a passenger for a lot of it, but he did his part of the deal there, I think. I don't think the offense around him is good enough, but I also just don't think he's good enough. And if this is your first time watching Bo Nix properly this year, after listening to me talk about him a bunch over the course of the season, you can probably have a better understanding of why I've said over and over again that I don't really criticize him and I don't think he's done anything wrong, but you don't see anything special there. You don't see anything that elevates the team around him or anything that you think you can build a Super Bowl winning team off.
He's the new Josh Allen, according to the lads on commentary. Did you hear that bit?
I did hear that bit, but he does not have that same insane level of athleticism that Josh Allen has, to be fair.
They were definitely phoning in quarters 3 and 4.
He's about the same age as Josh Allen.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that part.
So, who blinks first next week is your final question on this bit. Talk to us about the balance on offense in the context of the question you asked afterwards.
Yeah, so if we talk about the Steelers and Ravens game here now as well, because the two of them are going to tie in together. And what you saw in the Steelers-Ravens game was a Ravens team dominate one of the best defensive fronts in the league by repeatedly running the ball. Lamar Jackson had 15 carries in the game. He had 8 by the end of the first quarter. In great irony, Lamar Jackson won a playoff game by being a running back after all of these years of people criticizing him, saying he's a running back who won't be able to win in the playoffs. But the Bills are similar. Like, the first 3 quarters of that game against the Broncos, they were running the ball. It was all about running. It was conservative in passing game. Now, they exploded in the second half. But to me, like, both of these teams are not built to run because they have quarterbacks who can't throw. They're built to run because that's where their strength is right now. And I think it comes down to these offensive coordinators. Who's going to stay disciplined? Who's going to stick with it when it's not giving you 7 and 8 yards, when it's giving you 2 and 3, but eventually it blows up? Because I know this kind of goes against what everyone wants. I think this Bills-Ravens game will probably be relatively low scoring. I think there'll be a handful of big plays that determines it one way or the other. But beyond that, it's going to be James Cook and Josh Allen making plays, running the ball. And then it's going to be Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson making plays and running the ball. Now, there's obviously Amari Cooper there, Mark Andrews there. There are guys who will chip in with big plays as receivers. But I think this is very much an old-fashioned type of game. The second, one last thing, second quarter drive from the Ravens, where they ran the ball on every single play against the Steelers for 15 plays and 82-yard touchdown. That's one of the most impressive things I've ever seen in an NFL game, especially in the playoffs, especially against that defense. That kind of thing they'll try and replicate, which will shorten the game as well, because it means you'll have 3 or 4 possessions in the first half rather than 6 or 7 or 7 or 8, which also lends to Josh Allen's patience. How patient can he be? How can he do exactly what he did last week, pick his spots to create big plays, or will he force it? The kind of thing we've seen him do in the past that has cost the Bills. So it's going to be a fascinating game, and I absolutely just can't wait to watch it. And it's interesting because in the past we've always been looking for the Brady Manning big passing matchups. I think this will be more of a running matchup, but it'll be just as fascinating. I
skipped the Steelers-Ravens there. Sorry, my bad. obviously
it was so comfortable. It was done at halftime.
Yeah.
Like the Ravens were unbelievable in the first half, and the Steelers kind of hung around the second half a little bit. I suppose there's such a big question over where they go. They're kind of Cian has it there as the third question, so I've skipped ahead. But the Steelers are consistently getting 10 wins, consistently making the playoffs, and consistently not really doing anything when they get there. And it might be their ceiling, but I saw somebody describe it as like, if you're never bad, then you can kind of never be good. Like they're not. They have no chance. They haven't had an elite quarterback since Ben Roethlisberger, who was there for nearly 20 years, and it's like...
You say that, except it is possible that you can trade if you're very brave. Like we saw the Rams, we haven't talked about the Rams yet, but they got Matthew Stafford. It cost a lot to get him. They got him, and
including
he's been
their
good
number one overall pick quarterback, who they got a couple of years before that, Yeah.
Oh, but you guys all know who this is going to be next year. So Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are out of contract after this year. If there's a trade for a quarterback, I'm going to ask you might both have it on the top of your heads right now. Who do you think it'll be?
Well, on Sunday I would have said JJ McCarthy, and now today I'm saying Sam Darnold. Because I wonder if Minnesota... we haven't talked about the Minnesota game yet, but I wonder if the last 2 weeks have shown that there's a ceiling. Sam Darnold. Sam's
free. Sam Darnold is a free agent, so that's a great shout in terms of free agency. But if they do trade for someone, it's going to be Kirk Cousins. We all know this already.
I don't know.
Like that's the exact type of career position they're in with that, and that's the kind of desperation move you make. And Mike Tomlin will probably get 9 or 10 wins out of him because that's what Mike Tomlin does. I was amazed at the end of this game. There was so much conversation about the Steelers firing Mike Tomlin, beyond the fact that the Steelers don't fire head coaches. They keep them for 30 years and then go through the ups and downs with them. I think he's done a phenomenal job. I don't think that team should have been in the playoffs in the first place. Like, they finished the season on a 5-game losing streak. You can't expect him to do any more with the offensive pieces that he had. And one of the real storylines of this game, and maybe you can give the Ravens a lot of credit for this because of the way they ran the ball, TJ Watt was anonymous. And if you saw the clip before this game, Mike Tomlin went to TJ Watt and put all the pressure on him for, and he was like, there's 2 gold jackets in the AFC North right now. They can't coexist. Yours and Lamar's. This weekend, you take away Lamar's and you put yours to the fore. And TJ Watt did not respond to it at all. So there was no impact from the defensive side. And when you're relying on Russell Wilson at this stage of his career on the offensive side, you wind up with a 28-14 game that probably should have been 35-7.
Coalition talks due to wrap up tomorrow. On Wednesday, we would expect the announcement immediately after that whoever gets appointed, maybe not immediately after, because I think there has to be the Ardèches at the weekend and the various meetings. But as soon as that happens, the Minister for Sport, whoever that is going to be announcing the Steelers home game in September. So that's something for us all to look forward to.
Yeah,
assuming we all
against
get tickets.
the Packers, you think, maybe?
I'm not sure.
Which would be just unreal, in fairness.
That would be incredible. If
they play each other once every 4 years. It's like 2 of the oldest and most storied and blue-collar franchises. It's unreal.
10 years of London getting shit games, and we get immediately, straight off the bat, Steelers-Packers, be like, ha ha ha. Anyway, sorry, Packers, Eagles, and Vikings, Rams. Let's do these quickly because we've already run into hour 3.
Yeah. I was going to say one thing, and I'll let Cian talk about the game, where I don't think either team were very, very impressive. It was an awful game of football, actually, especially in the first half. But the 7 teams in the playoffs is too many. It's far too many. It's led to, like, if you look at it, Washington were the only road team. They're the only wildcard team that got through. But the Packers were a 7 seed. Denver were a 7 seed, fighting it out against the Dolphins and the Bengals. I'm sorry, would anybody be any worse off if the Bills got the bye that they earned? And and likewise with this game, it felt like the Eagles had a bye week kind of season, that they earned that. They had a really, really good regular season. You should be rewarded for that. The Packers, number 7 seed, the Packers have known they're in the playoffs for a long, long time. There's been no mad urgency to that. There's been no rush. There's no 8th team in the NFC to come and get that job. There's too many. You need it. So one, it affects the end of the regular season because it's all kind of wrapped up, or it's bad teams fighting it out like Denver and Miami, or it's all wrapped up too early. And in this case, it's like Packers weren't good enough. They were nearly good enough. They nearly, but they lost too many games. They're gone. Eagles should have got the bye. This game was all pointless. I think there's far too many. 6 games is too many.
Unless the only slight counter argument is that we thought that maybe Jordan Love was going to be something, and he had his opportunity. And I know. And it's likewise.
I just think 12 teams out of 32, it's hard to make the playoffs. 14, it's too easy.
Say Joe Burrow had made it and suddenly was on a hot streak, you'd be excited about that.
I know,
Definitely. I think there's probably some teams who go through some injury stuff that they recover from and then bounce in as scrape in, bouncing. But if
maybe I should have picked it on the Denver game rather than this game because I thought Green Bay were probably a playoff team. But again, I don't think it helped them that they were cruising in there since the middle of November.
Yeah, very, very weak middle tier of the NFC this year. Cian, quickly.
Yeah, I rubber stamp everything Mick said there. Wildcard weekend this weekend was a horrible watch, to be honest with you. This game specifically, Love, worst game of his career. Part of that, I'm not massively trying to hammer him because he's had a season of different injuries. The other part of this, I've never seen a team in the second half lose. Have already lost their starting wide receiver, first choice wide receiver, to an ACL before the game. Romeo Doubs goes down with what I think was a concussion in the end zone on the end of one drive. Then running back Josh Jacobs gets injured immediately on the next play. Then Jaden Reed gets injured immediately on the next play. Suddenly Jordan Love, after being terrible before that point, so we're not writing this off for him at all, suddenly he's throwing to guys who wouldn't be on the field in the preseason. Like it was awful to watch.
Their left guard went out in the first quarter as well, and the guy who came in just kept giving away penalties. So they brought in a third choice left guard, and they were having all kinds of trouble as well. Like nothing went right for the Packers in the whole game. So it's weird because the Eagles weren't madly impressive. So you wonder when you take that to next week. We're going to talk about that game in a second. You kind of are a little bit questioning of them because they didn't really show much form. And Hurts back after 3-4 weeks out with a concussion and didn't look himself.
We have spoiled this already, obviously. We've talked about Sam Darnold maybe not even being the Minnesota Vikings quarterback next season. He's obviously not going to be playing next week because they got hammered by the Rams in a game. Obviously, afterwards, the players of Los Angeles were talking about how they weren't just playing for themselves. Matthew Stafford talked about how they were playing for the city. And they certainly fronted up and represented the city very well.
Yeah, I call this as the blowout after the second drive because Matthew Stafford, and I'm not saying that as I'm saying, I'm some genius. It was that Matthew Stafford came out and was like, all right, I'm hitting every throw. Doesn't matter. I'm in playoff mood. I'm going to hit every single throw. And it looked like that was a terrible call at one point because he had this really weird fumble. But when they actually reviewed it, he had thrown the ball away expertly with two guys on top of him. And it just, from there, it was like, all right, Stafford's locked in. This is going to be this game is going one direction. And because Brian Flores blitzes so much in early downs, Stafford is able to cut those apart. Puka Nacua was great. Sam Darnold held the ball way too long. He couldn't rely on the running game to set up the shot passing plays, and he became the quarterback who he's been for the last couple of weeks now, so it wasn't just this game. He became the quarterback that all of us over the years have gone, yeah, that's why you don't sign him, that's why you don't keep him. This game specifically, I don't think there's a huge amount to it for us to talk about. Maybe there is, and moving forward, I would expect the Eagles to beat the Rams, even though the quarterback gap there is massive. Like, you would favour the Eagles. But moving into the offseason now with Darnold, like, forget about the Vikings. I think they have an easy decision. You move forward with JJ McCarthy. That's your first-round quarterback. That was always your number one option anyway. When he hits free agency, how do you evaluate his season and what you pay him? Because there's no such thing as that middle market anymore. You're not getting him for $25 million a year. You're getting him for $50 million a year, or probably more. But how are you confident in that after the way he's finished his season, after the way he's been inconsistent and how he's regressed back to being that guy who beats himself repeatedly? It's going to be another Kirk Cousins situation, I think. So maybe this is the quarterback that the Raiders wind up with or someone like that. And I just don't think that's going to go in a good direction because that Vikings team had every single thing he needed for success. And what did he do? This.
I think that he is a serviceable 11th to 15th best quarterback in the league. And you can have a winning season. And, I think that there's probably Sean McVay in the playoffs. We've just been talking about Matthew Stafford in the playoffs. I don't know. I
think you have to create a middle market for him, realistically, and hopefully that's. I think Baker might be on 35 or something like that at the Bucs, because he was obviously coming from having lost his starting position in Cleveland and so on. So, yeah, I don't know. I think you're right, Ger. I think he ultimately has proved himself as a starter. Has he proved himself as a winner? No,
not yet. Matthew Stafford is younger than Tom Brady was when Tom Brady won the first of his second three-peats. Wasn't actually Super Bowl.
I
You know
feel
what I
like
mean?
The first of the
using
second
Tom Brady there, though.
Trebles.
Yeah.
He's going to be 37 the 2 days before the Super Bowl. Would you be terribly surprised if Matthew Stafford suddenly was to go on a mad Joe Flacco run and have more Super Bowls?
Stafford is someone that you would completely, if he's there, if he's fit, you always just worry. Well, Stafford's the only concern I ever have with him is his body. Like, I mean, the man's been in back braces and, like, you know, is literally has broken his back while he was at the Lions. Like, he's been an old man in football terms since he was about 29. You know, and now he's still going at 37. He has bursts of fitness where he looks unbelievable, and that team is so dangerous. We were talking about that just before we started recording, Ger, about like, and I picked the Rams last week when we were on McKean just purely because it ultimately came down to me trusting Sean McVay. Like the what they can continuously get out of that team is unbelievable. And for the second year in a row, they've, in what was supposed to be a kind of an off season, they've peaked right towards the end of the year, and they've come into the playoffs flying. And last year they easily could have beat the Lions, didn't. You know, would you back against them doing it this year against the Eagles? I've picked the Eagles, but I'm sort of almost talking myself out of it now. Really, I don't really madly trust this Eagles team.
We shouldn't let me off in particular after last week, because I had a very strong take about one of the players on the Rams and how he would be the reason that the Rams lost. Ahkello Witherspoon's job this week was to cover Justin Jefferson, and I kind of pointed out he's been terrible in coverage on players this year. Had a decent game against Jefferson, but it wasn't necessarily his coverage. He was so physical and so good on the edges, shutting down those quick outside passes. He sacked Sam Darnold to create the fumble. This is a guy who's been in the league for years but has never really been a star, and he's still not a star, but in this game he turned up and played like beyond the limits that I thought he had, and you've got to give him massive credit. If he does that again next week, and if the defense as a whole plays with the physicality and the urgency they played with this week, yeah, because Jalen Hurts is on the other side of the ball, they've got a chance. Yeah,
and look, injuries can happen. Saquon goes down in the first quarter and all of a sudden it's a blowout and you're like, oh, well, no one saw that coming. Whoever has the most amount of their best players available to them over the next few weeks, and then Patrick Mahomes, they're the two things that are going to decide this whole thing, right?
6-day turnaround going from, I don't know if I presume they went straight to Philadelphia, but obviously they had not important in the grand scheme of things, but obviously they had to move to Arizona for their game and so on this week. So you'd imagine there's a little bit of kind of organisational hassle going around with the Rams that might not help them as well come Sunday.
That's not Kroenke can roll out the private jets. He'll be grand. Our picks to wrap this up. I think we've kind of teased this. I don't think anybody's going to be confused by the Kansas City Chiefs. Me and you, Mick, have gone for the Lions against the Commanders. You're on the
interesting
the hype train.
He really believes in Daniels. Like he's going full on for it. Like go into Detroit and win.
I'm 100% on board with Daniels, but this is also this is not going to go the way everyone expects it weekend, I don't think. So every single year I try and kind of talk myself into someone. So that is what's happening here. But also, yeah, if I get this fully wrong, then fair enough. But
that's what we both did with Green Bay last week.
Yeah, I don't learn from my mistakes. We all know that by now.
The Rams at the Eagles, I would happily change my pick.
Me too, I have to say, yeah.
On the basis of that. And I've gone for the Bills. You guys have both gone for the Ravens.
The way I was looking at this
during the regular season.
It's funny how the regular season does actually largely hold up in the playoffs.
Yeah. The way I looked at it was, I feel like Lamar and Allen, given that they're 1 and 2 in the betting, and it's almost certainly going to be Allen, but they're the two best quarterbacks in terms of form at the moment, in terms of MVP voting and so on. Like, it's pretty much a wash. I think their receiving options pretty much a wash. There's a lot of that stuff going on, and ultimately it comes down to, though James Cook is very good, there aren't many Derrick Henrys in the world, and the damage he can cause, the fact it's in Buffalo, Baltimore are a team that are fairly well suited to playing in cold weather as well. They do it all the time. I don't think it's going to be a massive issue for them. I just sneak it. I maybe if I was just going, the Bills at home is a big advantage.
All right. So we don't know anything, basically, is what we're saying.
We know the Chiefs are going to win.
No, Mahomes will win everything. We know that. These are 4 really good games, though, I think, as well. Matchup-wise, entertainment-wise, I think this will be a great weekend.
Yeah, this is the weekend to get on board the bandwagon. Folks, see you next week.